Hey, what is going on, guys? It's Connor here from MenuDocs, and welcome back to a new podcast on the channel. In today's podcast, we've got Doug, which is one of MenuDocs' moderators, and we're going to get to know him a little bit better. So as always, I've got a somewhat structured podcast, but it's probably not going to be as structured as I would hope. But we'll probably start off with saying hi to Doug, and then we'll get to know him a little bit better. So, hey Doug.
Hello.
And tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you from? Age, name, date of birth, where you live, social security number.
Mother's maiden name, you know. So
Exactly.
I'm Doug. I'm from America, Ohio specifically. I am 24 years old and student, I guess, would be student slash IT professional.
Yeah. Well, that pretty much sums that up. So at the moment you're studying to be a pilot, right?
Yes, studying to be a pilot and working.
What do you do for work? Just like a part-time job?
So yeah, so I'm a part-time IT specialist. So we're a small managed service provider in Ohio. So basically, if companies don't want to have their own IT department, they contract us to manage their systems, administrate users, servers, that kind of stuff.
That sounds like big money right there.
It gets me by. I'm paid well for what I do, I should say.
Oh, I meant like from a business perspective, like, cause there's gonna be a lot of people out there that just don't know what they're doing on computers, but they want to have a business, and then because
Absolutely.
this day and age need IT stuff.
Absolutely. And it's an HR nightmare to hire IT guys too.
Is it? Why is that?
Yeah.
Now you've got me interested.
So there's a lot of risks that come with giving somebody control of your systems. So it's I wouldn't say it's easier to hire internally. It's easier to contract out to a company where, we have a service level agreement where they say, hey, if we have a problem, you have 1 to 4 hours by our contract to respond to the emergency or the problem as it arises. So I know for us, we have a 1 hour response time guarantee for emergency situations and a 4 hour response time for just normal issues and inquiries.
Yeah, I would
So
have never thought
it's
of
a little
that.
bit easier. Yeah, it's a little bit easier for the companies to manage it that way so that they don't have to worry about, benefits and salaries and all kinds of stuff for internal employees.
Well, that sounds fun. I don't want to do that ever. I'll just hire your firm to come and do the IT stuff. It's fine.
Sounds good.
Anyways, let's kind of move into kind of the general information kind of things. So you're learning to be a pilot now, but you
Mhm.
had a love for program. You still have a love for programming, but you were studying to be a programmer, like with computer science and stuff like that.
Yep. So I went to college originally as a music major. Found out that wasn't for me, so I swapped to computer science. Did 2.5 years of a computer science degree, and then I switched to aviation. So I'm now in a flight school, local college, and that also has a flight program.
Well, I'm happy that you're doing something about like trying to find what you're passionate about, because I'm kind of sitting on my ass doing nothing.
It took me a few tries. I didn't get it right away.
Yeah, but like at least you're trying. But yeah, what got you into programming specifically, or is there just kind of a non-specific reason? Kind of did it for the fun.
So I grew up obviously loving video games and all that. So I had an aunt that worked for Nintendo of America, and that aunt had connections with a university called DigiPen University out in Seattle, Washington,
Yeah.
and that's where Nintendo's headquarters are. So I would go out there, for a couple weeks every summer while I was in high school, and I would take classes at this DigiPen University in game programming.
Oh yeah.
So
Free of
they would give
charge.
us like, yeah, super basic stuff, but it introduced logic and how programming and how computers work and how they think, how they interpret code. They would give us like little engines that they had made in very simple high level languages that they had designed for us to use. But it was really fascinating. It really got me in the mindset of coding.
Wow. Okay. See, this is what it's who you know, not what you do. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I wish I had family that did something cool. um, so moving on from that, programming obviously wasn't your dream job, but you still do it on the side, right?
Yep, I do freelance software development. So I say software development. It's mostly Discord bots and some web backends, maybe some API stuff.
Okay. We'll get back into that in a bit. But so moving on, your dream job is to be a pilot.
Correct. Yep, airline pilot and maybe considering going into the Air National Guard, doing some military flying as well.
Ooh, that's interesting to me because a lot of people start in the military to then go commercial after, so that they can get that training. But you're just like doing
Hmm.
backwards. You're
Yep.
like,
So the Air National Guard is it's unique in the aspect where I can have a part-time commitment to the military, so I can still maintain my civilian career and also serve and get to fly some pretty cool planes with some pretty cool people.
and kind of expand what you know and who you know.
Absolutely.
That's great. Love that. I always love hearing people's stories of what they're doing with their life because I'm doing fuck all. Um, so with that said, programming is probably what drew you to MenuDocs.
Yep. So originally, found y'all through Duncan's JDA videos. I actually wanted to learn Java and JDA, so I watched a couple of his videos and stumbled through, getting a basic JDA bot up, and then decided that Java was not as pretty of a language as I was hoping, so I
It's
abandoned that.
dog water. It's awful. It's the worst language to ever exist. Use Kotlin. Java's bad.
I I have started learning Kotlin since then.
Good. Yeah, no, Duncan will literally fight you to the death to say that Java's probably the best language to ever exist. But I don't know. It just seems like the most unnecessarily complex language, like just from
It's
a
just
like from the
the
outside.
syntax is just really ugly, in my opinion.
I mean, that's fair. It's honestly, I kind of feel the same about Python though. Like this, it's similar to JavaScript, but not. You know what I mean? Like it has like some fundamental features that could transfer like over from JavaScript knowledge, but then you're just looking at stuff and it's like, why do you do it that specific way? It's the dumbest way to do
Yeah, Python's just English with extra steps.
it. um, so you joined the Discord through the JDA series. Did you watch the Discord.js series after you realized that Java was dog water?
Not right away. So what I hopped into the server originally for JDA, and then I realized that y'all had some JavaScript stuff. So I just spent a lot of time in particularly the Discord JS help channel, and just like helping people out. And through most people just copying the code, I had to go get familiar with the code that most people were bringing in. So I went back and looked through the GitHub. I can't say that I watched the series all the way through, but I did watch a couple of the videos just to see what was said and the progression.
Know it'd be really good. Just adding on to that. If someone could go through the Discord.js series and document every time I say obviously, because I say it a lot. I want to.
So I have a funny story.
Oh no, what
Uh,
is this?
in college, my CS1 professor, which was like basic C++, um, she was very like she was an immigrant, so she came over from China, and she had a very thick Chinese accent, and it was kind of hard to understand. English was obviously her second language, but and it was like every third word out of her mouth was the word actually.
Oh.
So it was like, and forgive the horrible phrasing here, but it was like, so actually you have to actually assign the variable, and it was terrible. It was the most
Yikes.
annoying quirk I think I've ever had in a professor. But she was really smart, and she had some good ways of describing the code, so
I
it was
think
all
the
right in the end.
reason I say obviously is a lot is not because it's obvious, but because I was sick of hearing myself when editing saying and like. They are the worst filler words ever. Like they just should
You
not
just
exist.
replace your filler words with other filler words.
Yeah, pretty much. It just makes me sound smarter and makes the audience potentially sound dumber. It's like the worst way to put it, but yeah. Like you're teaching them to do something, but you're like, yeah, this is obvious, and if you don't get this, you're dumb. Um,
How dare you not understand complex logic?
right? Um, but okay, so you went back and you looked at the GitHub and you learned a little bit about the series, which is recommended for people that want to help in our support channels because there's a lot of people that come in and ask questions about the code. Um, and now you're a staff member. So what happened in between? Weren't you a proficient member as well?
Yep. Proficient, helper, any number of titles that role went through in my tenure.
Okay, so you became a helper slash proficient member first or a staff member first?
Nope, helper first, and then applied for staff at the next opening.
Ah. And what do you think it's like to be a part of the staff team?
That's pretty laid back. It's can't say
Pretty
too much
vibey.
bad about it. I mean, it's pretty chill.
Well, I like to hear. I see. I asked this question in every single podcast to try and get people to trip up and say that it's bad because then they're fired. Um, so just moving back to the whole programming thing. So you wanted to learn a little bit of Java. So would you say that you're pretty base knowledge, or like you actually tried to extend your knowledge in Java?
Oh, extremely base. I got a basic Discord bot up, and that was literally about it. I spent almost no time learning the actual language, so I would say my knowledge of Java is next to nothing.
Okay. So you've got a base knowledge of Java. And what other languages? So you've got JavaScript for sure.
Yep,
And that's
I'm very proficient in JavaScript. I have some Swift and Swift UI knowledge just from messing around making iOS apps, and then a little bit of C++ that I retained over the past like 6 years of not programming in that language. I can still stumble my way around it, but I would not call it fluent.
yeah, I think knowing programming languages is cool, but I think people that have the initiative to go through and be able to read the docs and like look at it from a different point of view instead of being like, I don't understand this. Let's move on. That's the best way to learn. So would you say that from I don't know how to phrase this. Would you say that reading the docs is obviously the best way to go about doing stuff? Obviously different people learn differently. So people are visual learners, and I mean visual in the sense of like being showed directly something. So videos such as the MenuDocs tutorials. Um, but would you say that getting the most information is from the doc specifically, or can you find video tutorials out there that are helpful?
So I'm a little bit mixed on this subject. I think that the best way to do it is to find I, I don't know. I like textual tutorials and lesson plans better than I like video based ones. I think it's easier for me to focus and break down what is needed on a textual based one. So for me, like going through and going and finding an old like C++ tutorial, I can go through like the assignments and the projects that they assign there, and I think it's easier for me to go from a textual reference than a video one.
So with that base knowledge of being able to read docs, you can like stumble around any language. So you could technically just go out and be like, I want to learn this language, and be able to stumble your way around and be able to build something with that language without learning it for weeks on weeks on weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that. So I got into Swift about probably about a month ago, and it took me probably 2 or 3 days to become comfortable in the language. So definitely the knowledge of JavaScript and C++ and all that helped me transition into Swift a lot easier than it would have been if I started from scratch with the language.
So now the reason I asked all these questions is because um I just kind of want to make it clear that if you go out and you learn a way, your specific way to be able to read any form of documentation, then you'll be able to stumble through any language. It's not about knowing the language, it's being able to read the documentation itself, because you're not going to always know every single part of a language. And that's why documentation is extremely helpful and extremely needed. And with that said, for the developer of said language, that's why you need to make your documentation clear, because unclear
Absolutely.
documentation is what just causes so many issues. And at the end of the day, it will probably make someone leave the language to go to another language that has a better documentation. Like for instance, reading Java docs for me is hard, whereas reading JavaScript docs is extremely easy.
Yeah, and there's also the thing that comes with it. Like you have things like MDN and W3 schools that have really detailed pages on, what the JavaScript, methods, properties, data types, all those are. Those are really helpful in breaking down concepts, and elaborate on all of those instead of just, here's a data structure and here's a property or a method of that, and here's the parameters it accepts. The W3 schools and the MDNs of the world, they actually go down there and they break it down and tell you, hey, when you run this, it modifies the original array, or no, it doesn't, and it returns whatever. But they just go that extra step. So those third-party tools are really, really nice, and languages that have them are really easy to pick up, in my opinion.
Um, so moving on from that, what's your biggest current project? Do you have any projects that you specifically are working on?
Current projects, I just finished up. Well, I guess a little while ago, but I just finished up. We have a garage door that is an IoT device, and at my house here, and the application for it is absolutely horrendous. I don't know if anybody's familiar with MyQ, but it's an absolutely horrendous app. Like if you're on your house's Wi-Fi and you walk outside and you happen to switch over to cellular, it'll log you out like immediately. So you have to
Oh,
log back into the system to close your garage door, and it's awful, I think. So I hooked into they have an undocumented API. So I hooked into the API and wrote like a little web server, a little API kind of thing to interact with my garage doors API, I guess you could say. Um, and then I just hooked it into like my family's an Apple family, so we have iPhone. So I hooked it into Siri. So now if I say, let me, hey, assistant, um, open garage door or something like that, it'll actually send the command to the garage door and it'll open it. So I don't even have to open an app or anything now.
that's dope. Yeah, everything I've programmed has not been like a visually like tangible thing. But that's kind of dope.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It exposed me to some new techniques and stuff that I hadn't used before, so it was a good learning experience.
I think going back to like my school days, I think the most fun I had was like with Arduino's robots. But like I can't do that now because I don't have the resources how to do that. I think if I was to
Yeah.
do something like that, I would probably get more into programming and different programming languages because it's like a tangible thing. Like I'm working to something that I will actually see in the end. Whereas like going through and making a Discord bot, I don't think that's as satisfying to me as being able to go through and make a robot get from A to B doing something.
Oh yeah. No, I totally get that. So I had a buddy in college who was a computer engineering major, and those guys are crazy. So I would walk into his dorm room or his apartment later on in the schooling, and he would just have breadboards and Arduinos and everything just laying out, and just like wires everywhere. And I'd always be so confused when I looked at it, and I'd ask him about it, and he's like, "Oh, this is a circuit to, change the status of a bit or whatever." And it's way over my head what those guys do, but it's super cool.
Yeah, I did two separate classes when I was in year 10 of high school. I did electronics, which was pretty much the whole soldering of wires and completing circuits and stuff like that. And then I did robotics, which was like baseline shouldn't have even been called robotics. It was like pretty much you made a scratch application and you were able to transfer that onto like a pre-developed robot, and it would do the certain like tasks that you had coded in placed in Scratch. Um, and that was interesting to me, the whole robotics thing. But actually soldering wires, like I don't like fiddly things. Like it actually
Hmm.
frustrates me. So like accidentally frying something and the teacher being like, "Yeah, now you got to start again." I'm just like, "Well, fuck you." Yeah, I don't know. I have all these memories from high school that if I wanted to potentially do them in future, I could. But I don't know. It's just been so long that I don't know if I'd still be passionate about something that I did like 3 or 4 years ago.
Well, sometimes the break is a good thing because you work on something for so long and you get kind of burned out on it, but you come back to it in a couple years and you just rediscover the passion for it. So never know.
Um, okay, so you make custom bots. How many would you say you've created for now?
I'd say probably 15 or 20 completed customer orders.
Oh, see, I thought it would be a lot more than that, to be honest. I don't know.
So
I just feel like everyone in the MenuDocs Discord, whenever someone's like, "Can someone make me a custom bot?" We're all like, "Yeah, go to Doug."
yeah, it's the weird part is so a lot of people that want a Discord bot don't want to pay for it or they don't want to pay very much for it. So you get a lot of people that are like expecting a whole, multi-purpose moderation bot for like $15, and it's not worth my time for that. Um, so I tend to charge on the high end because I have experience and a lot of experience in JavaScript and experience with web apps and APIs and all kinds of different stuff. So my time is a little bit more valuable than you know somebody who just picked up the language a couple weeks ago or something like that. So a lot of people find my hourly rate to be a little bit hard to
Steep.
swallow,
Yeah, yeah.
especially for something like a Discord bot.
Mm.
Um, so it kind of it's a double-edged sword because I guess that's not a good way to put it, but it's high enough to discourage potentially troublesome customers while also being accessible enough for, I would say, like mid-tier customers. So I get a lot of people that can't afford it because they're too young or whatever the case may be. Um, and a lot of the times I notice that those customers are the hard ones to work with because they don't really know what they want. So I have to spend so much time, getting it out of them what they want and how they want it to work. And then there's inevitably a million changes that have to be made because they didn't articulate what they wanted, initially. And then that causes the cost to go up because more time is spent in development. It just goes into a downward spiral very quickly with people like that. But the clients that I end up getting because of the higher hourly rate are very, very goal oriented. They know exactly what they want and they know exactly how they want it to work. So in the end, it ends up saving them a lot of money because they're able to articulate what they want right away, and there's not many changes that have to be made once the bot is completed.
Yeah. Okay. So, wow. Yeah, I would have thought. Obviously, there was going to be like a few people here and there, but to think that you've only managed to get like 15 to 20 people out of that. How long you've been doing custom bots? Like it's like a year, over a year now.
So I mean, I don't really consider. So I started with service teams, which is like kind of a weird thing in the Discord community. There's teams out there that match up freelancers with clients. It's like the whole Fiverr thing, but in a Discord format. Um, and they attract like Minecraft communities like almost exclusively. So you get a community of people that are primarily between the ages of like 12 and 16 that are the clients, and then you get the same age range usually for the freelancers. So you've got low budgets, and then you've got freelancers trying to undercut each other. So I did that for probably about a year when I first got into JavaScript, and I made probably in that time I probably made 40 or 50 bots, but I was definitely not valuing my time. I was accepting really low pay for it and stuff like that. So I don't like to count that in the amount of bots that I've done because I feel like that was too early in my career to be able to claim it now. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, yeah, no, I get that. I feel like
So
people look at Discord bots and go, "Oh, that must be super easy to code. Like it's a Discord bot. It's only a Discord bot." But they're still paying someone to do it because they can't understand it.
yeah, there's still logic on the back end and there's still coding that needs to be done. I mean, just the same as a website or web app or anything like that. It's just the interface is through, a Discord chat app instead of a browser.
Have you thought of doing like packages? Like for instance, you could do like a moderation package and you can bulk sell that instead of just single use, like stuff like that.
Yeah, but then I have to support a user base instead of individual clients. And usually once they purchase the package, they don't want to pay for, my time customizing it or anything like that. So The pre-made stuff is it's cool for some people and people who have the time to maintain a large user base. I simply don't have the time to support, even 50 people that might download it or purchase it for a couple bucks. It's too much time for too little return.
Yeah, because like maybe a year or two ago we were talking about doing that for MenuDocs. Like we'd do a couple packages for JDA, a couple packages for Discord.js, and then a couple for Discord.py. And it just kind of got chucked under the rug because of that specific reason. Like I feel like having that for maybe like a moderation tool for like $15, I feel like people would be like, oh, that's too steep, or like you'd have the people that buy it and would be like, yeah, can you now customize the entire thing for me?
Right. As soon as somebody hands you a dollar bill, they think that they own you in that
Yeah.
product. It's just the entitlement that people get for paying, less than a McDonald's worker, earns for a product is just the entitlement that comes along with it is just it's too much for me.
But the customer's always right. Retail, am I right? Moving on. So do you have any people that have come back to your service, or is it just like kind of one-time customers?
I've had a couple repeat customers. Yeah, absolutely. So I had a guy that purchased just a general purpose, information bot. It was very simple. There was no advanced logic behind it. It was pretty cheap. And after it had run for a while and it had proved stable, he came back to me and wanted a more custom system for his economy and shops and that kind of stuff. So I was able to accommodate him as a repeat customer, which was nice.
So like he came back and wanted it as an addition or a separate bot?
No, it was made as a separate bot.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that's pretty much all that about custom bots. They're fun. It must be fun.
No, they're super fun.
Yeah, it must be fun to have those conversations. How many people do you reckon DM you?
Oh, I probably get 50 DMs a week.
Wow. So putting
just
that
from the different servers that I'm in.
Putting that into perspective, you've made probably what you said 15 to 20 bots that are actually
usually.
Okay.
The majority of people DM me and they expect it for free, and then when they find out there's a cost associated with it, so those guys are done in usually 2 or 3 messages, and then other people get to the the price negotiation side and they don't like the rate, so those guys are usually I spend probably 20 minutes in DMs with them, and that's about it for them.
Wow. That's it. That's so interesting to me because I feel like I don't know. I feel like you would have got more, because you're in the MenuDocs Discord, which is I would say fairly sized, and I'm guessing you're in like other development sized Discords as well, like couple thousand other users, and you only get like 50 DMs. That's all you get. That's about how many DMs.
The funny part is
that's how many DMs I get a week just from saying, "Hey, I appreciate your videos."
Yeah. So the weird part is, so a lot of the Discords that I'm in aren't like new user facing ones, if that makes sense. So MenuDocs is very accessible for people to learn how to program, but a lot of the other ones that I'm in are, API and, library specific channels that people that are in those channels are usually already developers, so they don't need my services.
I mean, yeah. So to completely flip the script and go to the other side of the spectrum, when we were talking before in DMs, you said that you did music. What kind of music?
So I played trumpet for 10 years, and most of that was classical music, orchestral music, and big band jazz.
And then you said you toured America, which is crazy to me.
Yep. So there's a performance activity called Drum Corps International, and that is basically marching band on steroids. And what that is the best way to explain it is professional marching band, but instead of getting paid, we pay for it. So what happens is we audition. There are two to four main groups, or main classifications of drum corps as people know them. So there's world class, which is the top level in Drum Corps International, and then there's also Drum Corps America, or Drum Corps Associates, my bad, which is a separate entity. So there's like Drum Corps International side and Drum Corps Associate side. On the international side, which is the side that I participated in. There's world class, open class, and then sound sport. World class is the top. Think of that as like MLB, NBA, and then there's open class, which is like the minor leagues or the feeder teams. And then sound sport is like an open class where anybody can perform. Um, and the Drum Corps International is age restricted, so you're out when you turn 22. You age out. Um, and Drum Corps Associates, I believe they have a division that's no age limit, but I'm not too familiar with the Drum Corps Associates side because I didn't perform in there.
Do you enjoy performing an instrument?
Absolutely, yeah, it was a lot of fun for me. So I auditioned for a world class group called the Academy. They're based out of Tempe, Arizona. I auditioned on trumpet and got a spot starting in 2017 as a full time member, and then I returned in 2018 as a veteran member. And so the way that works is you audition over the winter usually. Audition camps start in November, around November, and then there's a camp every month. Usually the final core lineup is set by February, and then once a month you go for a weekend out to Arizona or wherever your corps is based. You rehearse with your corps, and then starting in May you actually move in with your corps full time, and you're rehearsing 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, um, until about early June, mid June, and then you start your tour across the summer, and your tour lasts until mid August.
Do you get paid for that, or is that just
Nope,
like accommodation
nope.
is
You
provided?
you pay a lot of money to be in this activity. So
Ah,
each summer cost me about $4,000, not including travel expenses.
yikes.
Yep.
uh, okay. The only reason I ask is because I personally think it's fundamental for uh youth to learn at least one instrument. I think it's a good life skill to have, and it teaches them like dedication to a specific thing, as well as being able to show off that ability, and it could also work towards being more confident in oneself. Would you say that's probably would that be the nail in the head right there?
Absolutely. So I think that learning an instrument is fundamental for most developing youth. So it exposes them to when you go throughout school, there's very much so at least in America. I'm not familiar with Europe or other nations, but at least in America, there's a pretty rigid you know structure to how everything works. You go to biology or chemistry or algebra or calculus or American history or European history or you know language arts or whatever the class may be, um, and it's pretty much a very structured material based classes.
Yeah.
Whereas you go to um, a music based class or skill or whatever you want to do, whether it's vocal or instrumental or percussive or strings or brass winds, whatever you want to do. It teaches them about the arts. It's a whole different aspect where creativity and all this comes into play. Um, it's a very valuable thing for youth, and it allows a outlet for emotions at a time where they may be very prone to emotional outbursts, being in their youth, going through puberty. It gives them a safe outlet of those emotions, which is really, really important.
See, I wasn't fortunate enough to learn an instrument, which is unfortunate. I wasn't in like a situation where I was able to do so when I was growing up. But I feel like if I could go back, I would hopefully try to at least do one instrument. Did you pick the trumpet in particular, or were you just like kind of assigned that?
So it was kind of weird. So we had going through, primary school or elementary school, we were in fourth grade. They started us with orchestra, and in fifth grade they allowed us to join the bands. And I wanted to do both, but that wasn't financially, in the cards. So I had to pick one or the other. I chose a band, and then from there, they had like a day where we could come in and try out different instruments. And the trumpet was what I picked and what worked best for me on that tryout, and I just stuck with it.
So the bands, what kind of instruments is there with that?
So in the bands, you have all the wind instruments like flutes, clarinets,
Okay.
saxophones, trumpets, trombones, tubas, all that stuff. And then you also have the percussive instruments, drums, xylophones, all those.
Okay. Because I feel like, well, at least in my experience, a lot of people learn like guitar and stuff like that around me. Um, yeah, I never really met people that learned like trombone and trumpets and like that.
I'd say it's probably a little bit more prevalent in the United States because we have marching bands is a large part of our culture, especially in the football culture. So American football culture. So I feel like there's more of a demand for band instruments in the American education system than maybe abroad.
I mean, the only time I ever see people walking in formation with musical instruments is when Santa is right behind them. The only time is once a year at the parades, and that's it. Like I've never
Hmm.
actually seen. I mean, our sports isn't really. I think maybe like AFL is probably the biggest thing here, which is like Australian football, which is like probably the dumbest sport to ever exist, but it exists. But yeah, there's like no like pre kind of textual kind of stuff. Like, don't sing the anthem. That just doesn't happen. Don't have any form of bands. I think it's more of like ads. Like there's just ads upon ads beforehand, and then
Yeah.
that's it. And then they kind of just like get into it. Oh, actually, to be fair, there's the like before show kind of stuff, like commentators talking about like player stats and shit like that. But I think America kind of does that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of people that do sports here, but it's not as big here. I think you really got to go to like Europe and America and stuff like that. That's where it's kind of big. Like football is real big in like Europe. And then you've got like your football, which is like what's it like NRL and
NFL, yeah.
NFL. Yeah, that's like the big stuff. But yeah, I don't.
Hmm.
When you say AFL to people that don't live in Australia, they're like, "What?" It's like pretty much football, but you can pick up the ball and kick it, and that's
Okay.
pretty much AFL. And the ball isn't actually circular; it's like more oval.
Yeah, so like an American football almost.
Yeah, but not. It's not as pointy.
Okay.
It's yeah, I don't know. It's
Is it
it's
closer to like a rugby ball?
probably yeah. I think smaller though.
Okay. Cool. I'll actually have to look that up. I've never seen
Yeah,
an Australian football.
don't waste your time on it. It's a bunch of skinny white boys in tight clothing running around. They not
Jeez.
appetizing at all. Uh, my girlfriend shaking her head at me. Just bullied Australian football. Go the Port Powers. um. Anyways, I want to talk more about your pilot stuff. Is what because I don't think I covered what actually got you into wanting to be a pilot over computer science. I think we kind of just went from computer science to actually worked out I wanted to do airplane stuff,
Yeah.
but I don't think you actually told us why.
So while I was going through the computer science degree, I enjoyed it. My intent with my computer science degree was to go into cybersecurity and penetration testing and stuff like that. But just something was bugging me. I grew up in an airline family, so my dad is a pilot, my grandfather was a pilot. Um, so I've been around airplanes since a really young age. I've traveled all over the world with the airline benefits that I'm lucky to have, and it was it was hard for me to not, how do I phrase it? It was hard for me to think of a future where I couldn't do that for my family. Um,
Uh, okay. So you like followed in
because
the footsteps because of past experience?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. So it opened me to the idea originally. Um, Going through computer science, certain classes for computer science are extremely difficult, like Calculus 2. Um, Both of the calculuses, at least at my university at the time, we were only required to take up through Calculus 2 for our degree. But those were very difficult classes, and I did not enjoy them. Um, I enjoyed the programming aspect of it, but there's a lot more that goes into computer science than just coding. So I don't know. I was a bit run down from that. I was burned out from classes, and I was sitting there not, knowing I wasn't going to have the flight benefits that come with working in an airline, and thinking about going to work and sitting at the same desk every day and doing the same thing. Um, it was hard for me to go down that road further, if that makes any sense. So I was I brought it up to my dad, and my dad's always been very supportive of whatever I want to do. He's never pushed me into aviation, at all. And I said, hey, I think I might be interested in this. What can I do? So he took me to the school that I'm actually at now. And we did a discovery flight, which is, that you go up with an instructor. There's no obligations. The instructor takes off, the instructor lands, but in the air, he's like, okay, so this is what this control does, and this is, when you pull on the yoke, this is what happens. When you turn the yoke, this is what happens. And then they let you like supervise, kind of like feel out the aircraft and see if it's something that you'd be interested in. And right away, I was bit. I mean, I went up there and I was immediately just having a ball. So the timing wasn't great. I was about to leave on my second tour with the drum corps, but when I got back, I started my flight training, and it's been a blast ever since.
You can hear like the tone difference in your voice when you talk about flying planes as to when programming. It's actually like when you actually listen close enough, you can hear the difference, and it's actually like funny to see. Um, so what kind of planes are you going to be flying? Like, what's your aim?
I mean, so everybody has goals in their career. So my goal for my career is to fly wide body jets internationally. So something like a 767, a 777, a 78,
Yeah,
or an
hold on,
A330,
pause,
340,
pause,
350.
pause. You're
Oh,
gonna have to like explain what they are. You can't just say what their names. Like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
so
Are they
in
like?
the aviation. Oh, so there's like different classifications of jets,
Yeah.
um, in terms of air transport. When you're going on short hop flights and you're on a jet, you might be on a regional jet, which is, when you think of the jets, the actual engines, like they're attached to the actual main body of the airplane, like towards the rear up high. That's what everybody thinks of as a regional jet. There are exceptions to that rule where the engines are below the wing, but that's kind of what everybody thinks of when they think of a regional jet.
Yeah, like
And then
private
there's
jets,
things like,
like that kind of stuff,
yeah,
or like smaller planes, like capacity wise, like that
yeah,
kind of
like
stuff.
for any American viewers, something like United Express or American Eagle, or the short hop flights on the domestic carriers. Those are
Okay.
usually on regional jets, and then you have like your standard, your narrow body passenger jets. Those are things like the 737 or the A320. Those are usually designated by like a single aisle in the seating. So you have seats on either side of a central aisle, um, and those are usually for like mid-range trips, maybe like cross the continent, maybe kind of stuff. Um, and then you have your wide bodies, which usually are
Like two
three
aisles.
sections of seating. Yeah, two
Yeah.
aisles. So you have like a centralized seating and then two outboard seatings with two aisles. And those are usually reserved for longer flights, maybe over an ocean or international, where you need to move a lot of people really far. So that's the ultimate goal, is to get to be a wide body international captain. But it's going to be a long time before I get there.
So with the aviation school, not only do you get to learn how to fly these planes, do you learn about the history of the planes?
Absolutely. So at my flight school, at my college, we had aircraft identification and airframe. So we had history of the development of airplanes, the different kinds of airplanes, how different airplanes fly, the different types of wings, and how everything reacts with aerodynamics and that kind of stuff, and how to identify different airplanes based on the look. And because all this is important when you're up, when you're up flying around and you hear a radio call from a Cessna, or you hear a radio call from a Gulfstream, you need to have like a general idea of the difference between those two and what you can expect, and how fast are they going to be moving, what kind of altitude can they go to, that kind of stuff. it's nice to have an idea of that in your head. So you got to go through and become very generalized familiar with all those different kinds of aircraft. And it's a lot of fun to learn, the origins of flying and how we got to where we are today through iterations.
So, with that said, though, so you learn the history. Do you learn history of planes that obviously have like not crash, but like have for instance, have you watched the movie Sully? Like the plane
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
the plane that went down into the Hudson. I think like I can't remember what plane it was specifically,
It
but
was the Airbus A320.
oh well, there you go. Did you learn about what happened during that flight and things that was like procedure that was taken, like stuff like that, and then you go through that and learn ways to potentially stop yourself from getting into situations like that, like situational awareness kind of stuff based off like stuff that's already happened, like because we live and we learn.
Absolutely. So there's a saying out there that so we have in America, we have the federal, like a rule book. They're called the FARs, um, and they're regulations that we have to be familiar with, and they're like rules for operating our aircraft. And there's a saying out there that says the regs are written in blood. So when there's a reg out there that may seem kind of strange, it's usually because there was an accident, um, and that
Okay.
was determined to be a cause of it. So case studies are a huge part of
That's what
studying
I
to be a
was
pilot
looking for.
because,
The,
yeah,
the words
you gotta
case
you gotta
studies.
learn. Yeah, learning from other people's mistakes is huge. I mean, there was a crash between, I believe it was KLM and Pan Am, I think. Don't quote me on that, but there were two 747s. There was a runway incursion. One of the KLM pilots started their takeoff roll while another airplane was still on the runway crossing. And a lot of people died. So we need to learn from that so it doesn't happen again.
Who is that?
Those are
Who's
very
that on though?
important.
Is that on the pilot or is that on the watchtower? Is that
Oh,
what you
that's
call it?
absolutely on the pilot.
Okay.
Yeah, that accident in particular was 100% pilot error and 100% on the KLM pilot in particular.
And that one was the one that was crossing over or taking off?
That was the one that was taking off. The controller had told him to wait while an airplane was crossing, and the tower never told him that the airplane was clear, and he just decided. Very abbreviated. There's a long case study about it, but abbreviated is he decided that he was just going to go,
Ah,
and
cool.
the airplane did not clear the runway in time.
Well, that's just not fucking nice at all. Really.
No, no.
um. Yeah. That's kind of left me a little bit speechless. Imagine having that.
It's
Was that a big plane, like one of those free?
Yeah, so those were 747s. Those are the stereotypical, the two floor airplane, not the A380, but the 747, the one with the hump. So the front of the airplane has two floors, and the back of the airplane is just single floors. If you've ever seen Air Force One, the plane the American president flies on, that's a 747.
Isn't Air Force One just a title designated to any air vehicle
Ye-
that the president's in?
That is correct. Any
Okay.
fixed wing aircraft that the president is in automatically becomes Air Force One. When I refer to the actual airplane itself, it's referring to the one that is typically
Isn't there two of them though?
designated Air Force One.
Isn't there two
There
of the?
is.
There's two of the same
There's
plane,
two
right?
two identical Air Force Ones. Yes, I believe I forget the military designation of the 747. Let me look that up.
I always forget the reasoning for it. Is it because I don't think it's gonna be due to like tripping people up. Is it because of if there's a mechanical failure, they still have a way to transport the president around? Is that what it is, or is it to move the staff that have to be with the president?
So I'm sure they use it for a bunch of different things.
I
I
don't
know
know.
they fly two of them sometimes for like I wouldn't say a diversion, but a dummy aircraft, and then I'm sure a lot of it is for um, spare parts and stuff like that as well. The designation, I just looked it up. The designation is the VC-25 is the designation for the military 747s.
Yeah, that's gone over my head. What exactly is that?
So like in the when an airplane is used by the military, they give it a designation that is usually different from the civilian nomenclature. So like if you think of the 707, which is a Boeing passenger aircraft, but if it's being used by the Air Force for refueling, it's the KC-25. It's just a different.
Is that
They
is
have
that
different
like
names for them.
when they're talking to, for instance, is it called a watchtower? What's a control room?
A control tower.
Control tower. That's what I was looking for. When they're speaking to those type of people, do they use that as their call sign to identify their plane?
No, so the call signs you'll have usually designated by, again, I'm not entirely familiar of how the Air Force does it, but I know in the civilian world, most companies have a call sign. So I know British Airways, I think it's Speedbird. So they'll be Speedbird 2 or whatever their flight number is. And then the
Okay.
controllers know that that's a British Airways aircraft and its flight number, whatever. I know JetBlue is just JetBlue 2, and United is United 2, and American is American 2.
Do you know how
But
like
yeah,
the
they'll
radar
have.
system works? Like the way they use it? Is there like a homing kind of thing on the aircraft themselves for better identification, or is there it's just like based off like ground radar to like work out where planes are, in the control tower?
So kind of an interesting thing. I believe at the beginning of 2021, all aircraft in the United States operating within controlled airspace are required to have an ADSB out, which means that the aircraft is constantly broadcasting its identifier, its altitude, its position. Excuse me, its position, um, constantly. So prior to that, they were not required to have an ADSB, so it was mainly ground radar and transponders.
Okay. Is there any specific reason for that, or is it just like modern age?
ADSBs allow for more complete data and allow for airplanes to talk to other airplanes.
Okay.
So ATC can see from ground radar, but if an aircraft has an ADSB in receiver, they can see other aircraft in the air, and they can also get things like weather and extraneous stuff like that. But the biggest thing is seeing the traffic.
Okay. There has there been any close calls with planes because of like misinformation from ground radar, like planes like potentially hitting each other because of it, or
So ATC tries to do a really tries to do the best job they can. They're usually very good about it.
yeah.
There was a midair collision, I believe, last week in the Denver, Colorado area
Oh.
between a small single engine aircraft and a twin engine cargo aircraft. No fatalities. Everybody survived, but the two airplanes did collide in midair, and that
Uh,
was
was it?
the. Oop, go
Did
ahead.
they like what happened to the planes? Like they were able to continue flying, or they just like yeeted out of there?
So the cargo airplane that was hit actually didn't know that he was hit. He thought he had an engine failure. So he declared an emergency. He was already on approach to an airport. He declared an emergency and continued his approach and actually landed at the airport. There's pictures all over the internet of this aircraft that has like its rear half almost like torn off from where it hit the other airplane, or the other airplane hit it, I should say. And then the other aircraft that was involved was equipped with a parachute. So the pilot actually pulled the parachute, and the airplane floated down into a field, and everybody survived.
Wow. What kind of single manned aircraft was it? Like a
I was a Cirrus. I believe it was a Cirrus SR-22.
Is there any way to like dumb that down? Like what does it look like?
Single engine aircraft, very very sleek. Um, you might want to put pictures up. I don't know if you can for this, but
Nah, yeah,
um,
no. It's mostly just MP3. Just audio.
okay. So if I guess the listeners want to go out and look it up, it's Cirrus, so Cirrus, and then it's an SR-22. So it's just a small single engine propeller driven aircraft, and then the other aircraft that was involved was let's see, Key Lime Air, or Key Lime was the name of the freighter company. The name of the aircraft is escaping me at the moment though. Oh, it's the Metroliner. That was it. So if somebody wants to look up a Metroliner picture, you'll see the aircraft that was involved there.
So they're obviously smaller aircrafts. Has there been any situations ever? Well, you probably won't know that there's been like those two aisle planes that potentially almost hit.
I'm sure there have been. I mean, the 747s collided on the runway.
Yeah, but I mean like mid-air kind of stuff, like it well
I'm sure there
from
have.
with like ground radar, does weather like mess with that kind of stuff, like with identifying where planes are?
Usually not.
Okay.
At least that I'm aware of. I'm not a controller, so I'm not super familiar with their particular radar setup. But I've never heard of weather interfering with a radar.
I watched a video probably the start of this year or maybe late last year of London Heathrow Airport, where their control tower is now like kilometers away from the actual airport because they've gone all like it's all like based off cameras and um like all the instruments that they have at the airport, like they don't have the control tower actually there,
Mm-hmm.
and that's dope. Like I think that's a perfect example of what modern technology does. Like you don't have to have a
Mm-hmm.
control tower there, and there's no I think one of the reasons they moved was now there's no like potential blind spots for the tower
Yeah.
because they have like full coverage of like the airport and like with their instruments and shit like that. I don't know. I just I watch those like type of YouTube videos where it's like 40-minute long videos that seem like they're
Mm.
sort of interesting, but like I have no use for the knowledge that comes out of it.
Yeah. So I,
Um,
I actually just looked this up. There was a mid-air collision in 1996 between a Boeing 747 and an Ilyushin II 76 or IL 76, a Russian large aircraft, and then the 747 from earlier. There were 349 people that died in that accident.
wow, it honestly it baffles me that an aircraft can carry so many people. You know,
Well,
I
the Air Force A3 or not Air Force, Airbus A380 can carry I think up to 550 people if it's a standard configuration.
on
Massive airplane.
the plane that I took from I think it was London Heathrow to I want to say some Singapore airport was a double decker. Like it was like I want to say it was one of the first iterations of it, but I feel like that's just something my dad said and he had no idea about.
Was it
Um,
the full thing a double decker?
I think it was, yeah.
That would have been an A380 then, the exact airplane I was just talking about.
Um, but this was fucking years ago. This was maybe 13, 14 years ago. I don't know if that's when the first iteration of that plane came about, but I don't think it will be.
Let's see. First launch date. It was developed in 1988 and looks like delivered in 2007.
Wow, okay, then that might be true. All right.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Have you heard about the jet that's gonna take like literally 12 hours of flight time? Like from UK to Australia is 24 hours. And that's a split flight. There's no straight flight. But apparently there's this plane that's like fucking fast as that will take the flight time to like 12 hours. I don't know what it is.
They're coming out with there's a couple companies that are actively pursuing supersonic passenger jets. Um, I'm not familiar with any of the particulars. There used to be a supersonic jet called the Concorde, um, that flew. I think it was about Mach 2, with passengers on board. So yeah, I absolutely believe that there's going to be another supersonic passenger jet here very soon with the technology that's come so far since then.
Oh no, it's a UK to Australia in just 4 hours.
Jesus.
How crazy is that? It's set to launch by 2030. It's a supersonic passenger jet, which is set to launch next decade.
Do you know
Oh, what it
the
does is it
brand?
uh uh I can't see it while skimming. Uh, the saber.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
basically, what it looks like from this image is it takes off, leaves the atmosphere, and comes back down. But it like
Jeez.
it's got like two. Hold on, I'll send you an image in Discord. It just looks like it flies much higher. Like it looks like what I want to say what SpaceX is doing, like where they go higher than normal generic planes, and it lessens the amount of time. And I want to say that's because of like how the forces work, like because you got
Yeah.
less weight and stuff like that. Wow. Oh, it's a space.
That would be something else.
It's a space plane. Yeah, no, I remember when they were talking about that a couple years back, and I was like, could you imagine how scrambled eggs your head would be after doing something like that?
Yeah. You would gain so much of your day back if you flew like or east to west. You'd get so much of your day back.
I I want to put this into perspective. Going from the city I live in to the next city over takes 8.5 hours. It's less time to go to the UK and back. It's just crazy.
That would
Like
be
you could
that'd be
literally
insane.
you could spend a day in the UK. You'd be like, yeah, I'm just gonna go to the UK for a day. Just you have a trip. You're there for like 8 hours, and you have your trip back.
Oh yeah. So part of the benefits of living in an airline family is we get free flights provided that there's available seats on board. Um, and
Doesn't
some
the
of the cool
captain
things
have
we've been able to
seats?
do. So, I mean, there is a jump seat up front, but there's a bunch of regulations and who can sit up there, and then it's up to the pilot's discretion and all kinds of stuff. So we
Yeah.
usually don't fly up there, but there's something called standby flying or non revenue flying, where we can, if there's an open seat on a flight, we can usually fly on it. So at no charge as well. So we've had a couple fun trips. I know me and my dad went down to San Juan, Puerto Rico for dinner one night, and then just flew back the next morning. Um, we've we've been
Could
able
you
to do a whole
imagine?
bunch of cool stuff.
Just like
We've
fuck
been
it.
able to do a whole bunch of cool stuff.
Hey, what's that? You want to go to a restaurant in a different country? Screw it. We'll go. It's fine. We'll be back tomorrow. And do you get like accommodation in the airport for pilots, or is it like
So
outside
I mean,
the airport?
so it depends on the airport and the airline that you're with. Some airports or some airlines have like crew lounges and stuff that they can relax away from the terminal, and a lot of pilots just go out into the terminal and relax, and it just really depends on the airport and the airline that you fly for.
Wow. What's your thoughts on things like SpaceX and like what they're trying to do with like international travel?
I'm not too familiar with what SpaceX is going to do for international travel, but I know I watched one of their launches the other day, and it was super cool.
It is kind of cool to see like what looks like a rocket to take off and then land again. Like
Oh
that's
yeah,
just super cool to me because
I think
normally we just see space shrapnel just falling out the sky.
yeah, the one I saw on Tuesday, they said it was like the sixth time that particular rocket had been recovered. So it was like the sixth space flight that particular rocket has done. It was mind-boggling.
It's honestly it's crazy to see what like we could potentially get to in our lifetime. Like just
Oh
seeing
yeah,
the stuff like that plane I just sent you is planned for 2030, so that's 9 years from now. But I feel like SpaceX is just gonna beat it there. Like I feel like they're like, no, I wouldn't say a couple years, but they're gonna beat it within the next 10 years. Like if they're already getting successful missions, like they're just gonna.
I
But I feel like the amount you're gonna have to pay to go on one of these is gonna be like extortionate.
I'm sure.
Like you're just literally gonna have to second and third mortgage your house just to go on one. Would you be
Yeah, it definitely
interested in
won't be for
flying
the
one of
everyman.
those?
If there's enough research done on the platform, I am open to flying just about anything.
Oh, see, I'm not a big fan of heights, so I don't know. I just feel like
Oh, I'm
flying
terrified of
a.
heights.
Are you really?
Yep, I have a terrible fear of heights.
That's crazy. Would you say that maybe you do flying to like to combat that?
Not at all.
Wow.
So if you give me a ladder and tell me to climb a ladder, I'm going to be terrified, probably about 10 to 15 feet off the ground. There's no risk of falling out of my airplane.
Oh, there is. Dun dun dun.
No,
I
no.
was gonna say that.
Short of the entire airframe falling apart, there's no risk of me falling out of my aircraft. In the aircrafts that I fly right now, I have a seat with a seat belt. I'm not coming out of that seat. On the larger planes, I can get up and walk around. There's no way for me to fall out of the aircraft. So as long as there's no way for me to fall, I'm usually not afraid of heights. But as soon as you put me up on a ladder or something with a chance of me falling, I'm terrified of heights.
Crazy. That's just like got me there. Oh, see, I would have thought that people scared of heights wouldn't fly planes.
A lot of people ask me about that when I say I'm afraid of heights.
I don't know. That's weird. I think we've covered everything on my list. So we've gone through programming, dream job, current projects, custom bots, or the selling of custom bots, your music stuff, the big plot twist from going from computer science to flying planes, XD plot twist.
Mm-hmm.
And then pilotness. Yeah. Would you say the studies are easy, like relatively easy?
There's a lot you have to know to be a pilot. I mean, there's the academics is probably more than half of it.
Cool. Well, I mean, I wasn't going to plan on being a pilot anytime soon, so it's fine.
I never know.
Yeah, no. I wouldn't trust myself to be in charge of so many lives. I just feel like
there's a lot of studying, a lot of responsibility involved with it, that's for sure.
Well, I mean, to be fair, like, yeah, you never know. At this point in time, if someone no-balls me to do a fucking barrel roll, I bet your ass I'm doing it.
Well, if you ever get a chance to go up in a smaller airplane, and this is for anybody, if you ever get a chance to go up and take a discovery flight, I would absolutely recommend it.
There you go. Anyways, I think I'm gonna cut it off here, unless you've got anything else.
No, I'm good.
Yeah. Well, that was Doug, everyone. Now we know everything about him, short of social security number. Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. We'll catch you in the next podcast. Catch you guys later. Peace.